So it's no surprise that today's workforce is ever changing. And when I think of the last 30 years when I've been working and really how things have changed and evolved so much from when I first entered the workforce till now, I'm still surprised at how many people in the workforce still follow a lot of these unwritten rules. And that's really what I want to focus on here today, because I think, believing in some of these unwritten rules is really holding several people back in their career progression. And the first rule that comes to mind is the notion of loyalty and job security and how they're somehow related. When you think of everything that's going on, the mass layoffs and the changes, the shift to the next industrial revolution with artificial intelligence and everything that's going on, the more we get into these business cycles, the more you realize that loyalty alone doesn't equal job security. And in fact, I don't know if loyalty alone ever really did equal job security in my past 30 years. Now, that's not to say loyalty isn't important. You should be loyal to your employer in the transactional sense, right? When you go to work, you should do the best that you can. You should be loyal to the duties that are put in front of you. You shouldn't try to cheat the system. You shouldn't, work with conflicts of interest. You should disclose those and make sure that you're keeping everything as ethical as possible. So loyalty in that respect definitely is still important in the workplace. But simply showing up and being loyal to the time clock and clocking in and expecting that to matter, just showing up for the last 10, 15, 20 years and expecting that to matter from a job security standpoint in today's workforce, quite honestly, it's an illusion. There is almost no relationship between you showing up, clocking in, and showing that you're loyal to doing that every day and expecting that to keep you long-term for another 5 or 10 years. Loyalty by itself isn't enough. What you really need to do, if you're really looking for job security, you need to think adaptability. That is much more important, especially as we have all of these changes accelerating on a regular basis. We have all this turmoil going on a regular basis in our workforce and in our world. Adaptability is much more connected to job security than loyalty. Now, couple that with visibility, being seen at work. When there's a meeting, you're just not a fly on the wall. You're actually giving input. You're giving insight. When there are corrective measures that could be taken or improvement measures that could be taken, you're voicing those things and saying, hey, I think we could do it better this way as opposed to this way, right? And so if you're really looking for job security, loyalty by itself, really, it's not going to help you. Those things are not connected. You have to be adaptable and you have to be visible with your adaptability if you want job security. So the second misconception that I see on a regular basis is this misconception that if you work harder than everybody else, you are guaranteed a promotion. And don't get me wrong, hard work is extremely important. If you're very good at being an individual contributor and you're always doing what you have to do plus an extra 5% or 10%, that's not something that I want to minimize in any way, shape, or form. But what hurts people in their career is that they simply think that being the hardest worker or the fastest worker automatically qualifies them to get the people leader promotion, the supervisor, the manager, those types of things. And quite honestly, that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, it would set someone up. If you just simply take the hardest worker in the room and they're the fastest worker and you put them in charge of a bunch of people, more than likely they're going to fail because they haven't been prepped and developed to actually manage people. Managing process and managing people are two very different things. So if you are someone who always puts in a little bit extra, always works as fast as possible, and you keep seeing all these, advertisements for promotions going to other people in the department or maybe outside hires, pause for a second, reflect on what have you done to build your people leader skills. Because again, that's a totally different skill set. And if you haven't done anything, instead of asking for, overtime or asking for extra work to do that you would do on a regular basis, ask to lead a project. Ask for a stretch assignment. Ask to maybe work in a cross-functional team. And if those things aren't available to you and you still want that, that next level to be a people leader, Invest in yourself. Find a way to maybe take some classes, some seminars, some webinars, those types of things to help you understand the different dynamics of being a people leader and having to be responsible for maybe the production of 5 or 10 people, as opposed to just for the production that's right in front of you. Because the mindset, the vantage point, the view that you have to understand is totally different from just the day-to-day. It's not that the day-to-day isn't important. It's not that the experience of knowing how a process should work isn't important. It just doesn't automatically translate when you're the fastest worker at that process or the hardest worker at that process. It doesn't mean you are due by any stretch of the imagination, do that promotion simply because you're the hardest worker in the room. And so the last misconception, and this one is almost more of an annoyance to me than anything, but this notion that, well, I clock in first and I clock out last. And that should, automatically get me some kind of bonus points or brownie points or job security or give me something extra simply because I take more time out of my day to physically be at the office or at the factory floor or whatever the case might be. And the misconception is widely accepted by a number of people and across industries. I've seen this over and over and over again that, oh, I clock in before anybody and I'm here longer than anybody. Hey, that's great. That just means you're on the clock as an expense. You're not being productive by just showing me your time card. Now, if you show me your time card and in a 10-hour day you're doing 15 hours worth of work, hey, we got something to talk about, you're extremely productive, that's a very positive thing. But if you're showing me that you're on the clock for 10 or 12 hours and only getting 6 hours worth of work done, you're showing me that you're an expense. But for some reason, there's this misconception in the workforce that, well, if I put in the hours, automatically they'll see I'm a hard worker. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. That's the furthest thing from anyone who understands even this much about a production metric. A production metric is an output per unit time. The time is the expense. The output is the production. How much production can you get out of the expense that you have to put in, that time that you have to put in? So simply coming up and saying, well, I put more hours in than anyone here. My voice should resonate the most. I should have the most say. Quite honestly, you should have the least say in what productivity measures should be taking place and what should be happening there, unless you can prove to me that in that overtime, in that extra time, in that 10 or 12 hours, you're doing 15 hours worth of work. All you're doing is showing me you're an expensive person to have around. So don't let these misconceptions about the workplace impede your career. Show your productivity, show that you're buying in, show that you're actively engaged, and build yourself. Find ways to invest in yourself. If you want to build your career into a people leader, you got to always find ways to invest in yourself. As always, thank you for joining me here on the channel. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and do leave me some comments in the comment section. I'd like to know what you thought of this video, but also any other types of content you'd like to see on the channel. Take care.